What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, the one, the only, the legendary, about to get absolutely yoked, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are on to win total predictions for the Western Conference ahead of the 23-24 NBA regular season. Before we get started, the usual reminder, just subscribe already, please, everywhere, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you haven't done so already, head over there. If you found us on the socials, which the handles are in our YouTube and podcast descriptions, if that's how you found our podcast, though, shout me out. Let me know. Hit the DMs in any of those social media apps to be like, hey, I found you on TikTok and I listen to your podcast now. That'll make us feel good. If you've done all those things, followed, recommend us, help us build up the community. We're not getting it from Twitter anymore because I refuse to pay for it. And so our tweets just get absolutely buried when we don't have guests. Buy our merch if you're looking to support the show. The link to that is in the podcast and YouTube description. Join our Discord. The link is in the podcast and YouTube description as well. That's where you can also let us know, hey, we saw you on TikTok or YouTube, and now we listen to your podcast. That's about it. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate all the kind words we've gotten about the look aheads, the pods we've been doing, the content we've been pumping out. Grant, how the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited. I didn't tell you this before, but I'm excited to get all of these win predictions exactly correct. That's what I've decided is going to happen this year. It didn't happen last year, but we've learned a lot, I think. So I'm ready to really just absolutely smoke this one.
That's a really just like bold strategy where you just want to.
And I won't be held accountable at all. So that's why I'm so bold.
We did both. We hit, I can't remember the exact rates. And I'm not going to look because our doc of win totals this year, I'm trying to set up as we're recording this. We both had a pretty high percentage. Like we cleared 50% on our over under picks. So we're going to be giving our exact win totals, and that in essence, we'll use the over under as like the talking point to meander through. And we're trying to account for everything. Teams that might tank, teams that might go out and make a trade, teams that might sell off players. It's a tough, I'm curious if any of our exact win total projections will hit, but this is just every year. It's so tough. And I don't know if you're the same way. When I go through it, I always wind up with too many wins at first, and I have to pull back.
100%. That really was a bigger problem for me in the West than the East. We're doing the West today. The East was just more, I don't know why, but it can't, there are two or three teams I think three, we've talked about Cleveland, that we like to win a huge number of games. And then kind of everybody else is, I don't know, but the West has, and we'll get to this, 7, 8, 10 teams that could all be in the 40-ish, 40 something range. And so you just add a couple extra to those, and suddenly you're 25 wins over what they did last year record wise collectively. So yeah, it definitely, I had a hard time with the West. And I'm curious, well, as always, to see, how far apart we are on some of these. Cause we probably shouldn't, I'm not going to get into like, well, this one was interesting. We'll get there as we get there. But yeah, this is always a weird, like, I guess we're optimists because we expect these teams to win more just across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the off-season training camp syndrome where it's everyone gained 10 pounds of muscle, cut down their body fat, best shape of their life. This is going to happen. Everyone's going to improve. And so you're trying to come off that high. Let's begin though. Okay. And so I think the best way to do this is we'll use the win totals as over-unders as just a talking point and see, or should we reveal where we have them with no, we should use the win totals, right? What do you think?
Let's do the win totals.
Okay. So we begin in the West with the Dallas Mavericks. Their win total is the most popular win total, by the way, by far this year at 44.5 wins. Grant, where did you have them?
So I got them under that with 42. And even if, like you said, this is definitely the season or part of the season where all the maybes, all the pivot points, all the X factors are like, we haven't seen them not work yet. So it's easy to assume, well, if this goes well for Dallas, then, maybe they're at 47 or whatever. It's simple for me. I don't trust the defense. Jason Kidd's defenses just tend to get progressively worse year over year at every stop. And we're now a couple years removed from when they were in the conference finals with what in hindsight was kind of a smoke and mirrors-y defense. So I don't trust that. I don't trust Kyrie Irving to play a full season or to play sort of a season uninterrupted by nonsense at some point. I think, we can say an injury risk to a star player is a huge concern for every team. But if Doncic misses time, and he has, in the past, then this team is just nowhere. So, I don't want to take all the talking points, but I got them a couple wins below that. Although, by the way, 42 wins, which is what I have them for, is 4 more than they won last year. So, I mean, I don't know what that says, but other than they just totally mailed it in on purpose at the end of last year. So
they're a tough team for me. I had them at 44, which is still the under. And I forgot that they were at 44.5 when I did this. Some of them are in the back of my mind. I initially had them higher, but I pull wins from somewhere. I look at it and I'm like, even if Kyrie Irving's available, even if Luka Doncic stays in the best shape of his life, the ceiling on this team is higher than that. How are they getting stops?
Yeah.
It's just, I know they added Grant Williams. Maybe Maxi Kleber stays healthy. Jason Kidd sounds like he's going to play. Olivier Maxence Prosper a bunch, as well as Derek Lively. Maybe he's just preseason trolling. I don't really know what that does to their defense, though. I think in the long run, it could benefit them playing those guys. The West is just really brutal. And this will become a recurring theme, there are 2 teams right now that I think if you gave them truth serum, they would say, we don't care about making the playoffs. We won't make the playoffs. That's the Spurs. That's the Blazers. I don't think the Rockets will make the playoffs, but I think that they fancy themselves. Like if you gave them truth serum, it's we're trying. And every other team, all 13 others, are going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And Dallas is just right smack in the middle of that with a bunch, in the middle of the conference above that chunk at the bottom and the real serious threats at the top. And I think maybe the takeaway is that, half of this conference could resolve itself in almost any order. That bloated middle is just like, Dallas could be 4th, Dallas could be 13th. Like that's all within range. So
if it's 13th, we're gonna be writing about Luka Doncic trade destinations.
Well, that's not even like a facetious thing to say. Like,
would you be shocked though if this team, like Kyrie Irving, Luka, stay relatively healthy, available, and it's just like, oh, they won 51 games? Would that floor you at all?
It kind of would. What actually, I can almost imagine them being a tougher playoff team just because they have those 2 guys that certain teams just wouldn't be able to handle. But as a regular season team, the lack of, those 2 guys are going to be the be all end all for this offense. And if one is out, I think that's going to cost you some wins. And like, we didn't really go through it, player by player, but like, who's guarding the other team's best guy? Like, it's Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Green. I guess you throw Grant Williams out there, Derek Jones Jr. Like, there's just like, Maxence Prosper is a rookie. Like, I don't care how, what his pedigree is. Like, there's just, Kleber's going to switch across all 5 positions again. Like it's 2019. Like there's just the defense specifically against like star wings is not there.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Let's move on to the Denver Nuggets. I had a tough time with them. They were at 52.5, which is fewer games than they won last year. They enjoyed really good health last year. And they were due. Like Jamal Murray missed the entire season previously. I also look at this roster, and here's where I get hung up. They just went through a bunch of long seasons. Nikola Jokic has been ultra durable, especially during the time that the load he had his shoulder while Jamal Murray was out, while Michael Porter Jr. is dealing with injuries. But so there's that. And then you could go through the championship hangover stuff. Based off what's coming out of camp there, it doesn't sound like they have it, which is good. And that was like, they're now entering a season with expectations, and that's new for them. So I could see that being not reinvigorating, but something that keeps them going. But I'm just like, they exited or they won last year in the postseason. You had 7 players you trusted on the floor in those high leverage moments. Now they have 6 because they lost Bruce Brown, and they're planning on replacing them. Look, at least 2 of, and if I set the over under 2.5, you might take the over. Zeke Naji, Hunter Tyson, Julian Strother, Jalen Pickett is there, Peyton Watson. Those guys are going to have to play real roles. And you re-sign Reggie Jackson. I think that adds some diciness to the backup point guard rotation as well. Will Michael Malone stagger his pattern lineups any differently? Will he continue going with the hockey substitutions because that's worse? A lot of people think Denver's bench could be better than last year. I could see a scenario in which it's all right, like Peyton Watson hits and Reggie Jackson has a bounce back year and Zeke Naji's finally staying healthy and he looks good. And the bench wasn't good last year. So you're working from very low baseline, and maybe you spend more minutes with Murray, Jokic, plus 3 bench players. But I could also kind of see it being, no, the bench is worse. And these guys just went on. I mean, their playoff run was short because they were so dominant, but I still went over. That's to say, I have them at 53 wins, but that's still fewer than last year. And I'm just kind of caking in like, are they gonna still come out? Maybe they're just so dominant it doesn't matter. Like, this is the team where if you had to single out any team in the league that won 60 games or more, that would be the team that I picked, would be Denver to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if I go that far. We're in the same neighborhood. I have them at 51 wins, which I guess is technically an under here. You hit on a lot of the.
It is in fact under.
you hit on a lot of the key issues. I think this team is just like, there's so many interesting, almost the basketball stuff is you got it. It's like there's depth issues. If Jokic misses time, this team like is suddenly bad. Like that's just what it is. But I got to stop saying that because that's 2 for 2 now. I've said if their best player is out, it's an under situation. I could see them resting their top guys more, which would put, those guys you listed as like fringy rotation players into more consistent, like big minute roles occasionally. I think I don't think there's a mental championship hangover for this team. I do think there's a potential to be a physical one where they're just more tired. Like some of Jokic's comments, which is just kind of on brand for him, like lamenting his plight as a professional basketball player, and how tiring it is, but and how unfun the summer was. Like, I don't know, some of that's real. You see it, that's why it's hard to repeat. You're worn down. Your season was 2 months longer or 3 months longer than everybody else's or most of the rest of the league. So this team played like a 50-win team based on their differential last year. So I'm actually bumping them up a win, which I think is more than fair considering the depth issues. And, I don't know what to do with them. Also kind of, taking the last month of the season off. Like maybe we're talking about a team that's coming off like 55 or 56 if they had pushed, but I don't see a reason for them to push this year after they didn't last year down the stretch. So 51 feels about right to me.
I will say, so it wasn't, I have them at 53, which is just the same as this past year. So I got that wrong. I forget that the West didn't have like a 55 winner.
Yeah.
No. I'm wondering if, as a final note on them, is just having a full season of Jamal Murray fresh, healthy, and available. Does that maybe even nudge up that regular season ceiling at all? Because if he didn't start the year that good last year, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I mean, someone like him, you look at, that was a long season, but for him, I mean, he was rehabbing, so that's its own thing, but he wasn't logging a bunch of minutes of NBA competition for the better part of a year. So more than that. So he might be a little bit fresher than the rest of the guys. But yeah, I think sure. Just like Dallas, like there's upside here, obviously, like, especially if some of the younger guys, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, if they suddenly are like, how do we play these guys more than 20 minutes a night? They deserve it. That's totally in play too.
Let's move on to the Los Angeles. Oh my God, the Golden State Warriors. The alphabet tripped me up again there, Grant. Their over-under is at 48.5. Where are you at here?
Is it time for Talk Me Down? It might be.
I mean, if you're going to say they win 60 games, I'm ready.
Well, I did like sort of bristle when you said the Nuggets are the only one that can win 60. So I have them at 51, which is tied with Denver. Okay. That's 7 more wins than last year. The main reasoning for that is I'm a homer. 1, 2, I'm biased. 3, I can't be rational about the Warriors. 4, and more seriously, I think Chris Paul, even if he plays nothing but 6-man, addresses major weaknesses. I think having their 6th, 7th, and 8th guys be Paul, Gary Payton II, and Jonathan Kuminga is kind of nasty compared to what they used last year. I mean, Anthony Lamb played a ton on a 2-way. Ty Jerome played a lot. Jordan Poole just was out there sabotaging. So the depth is there. And I think Kuminga breakout potential. Everybody's lost their minds after he was really good in their first preseason game. I mean, we need to pump the brakes, but the talent's there. I think also, and this is what I kind of keep coming back to, I think they really give a shit this year about the season and about kind of like trying to show that last year was not who we are. That's like, if I heard a pundit make that argument, I would roll my eyes, and like everyone listening, roll your eyes. I get it. Like that's just not a real argument. But I think all, the sort of rotation, non-talent, non-basketball based factors just all sort of push in the direction of this team will be much better than last year and should, I think, beat this over under. You can, of course, say these guys are all old as dirt and injury, and they're going to break down. And I have no response to that. Draymond Green is already hurt with a sprained ankle. So please go under and give me good reasons to walk this back.
I mean, I went under. I have them at 47. How many players deep that you trust do they stretch for the entire year? It's 6. Is it not?
I think it's 8. I think you throw Peyton and Kuminga in there as guys you trust.
I'm
7th
sorry.
and 8th guys.
You can't throw Jonathan Kuminga as a player you trust in there. I can't.
I just did it.
Fair enough. I just think, look, Draymond's already dealing with the ankle stuff. This team is older, and I'm not using the old as dirt stuff, but I'm just, is there going to be weirdness with their closing lineup? How well does it work with, okay, it's great that Chris Paul was looking for Steph Curry in a preseason game, but will there be some functional awkwardness there when Draymond Green is on the court and he's someone else who's also going to, like, the combination of Steph, Draymond, and Chris Paul feels like it could get a little bit fickle offensively. And then what are they defensively this year? We know what like their top end outcome was, that best 5-man unit. But like when you throw Chris Paul into the fold and it's, well, if he's playing with Steph or if he's running some of the bench lineups, what do those look like defensively? And so I just have so many questions. And I think I don't want to continue repeating this. Just the West is so brutal that you're starting to pull wins left and right from people. And so I went under. I'm actually surprised it was so close to 50. Even Steph just misses time. And like Chris Paul can miss time, or it's like, is he going to play? Does he not miss time because they're not going to be playing him as many minutes? But if he's not playing as many minutes, is he the type of player that needs to be in rhythm or can just come off the bench or play in smaller bursts and still be as effective? I have so many questions about this team, including its reliance on a Jonathan Kuminga. What type of role is he going to play? What does Klay Thompson look like defensively? That I think they're still a playoff team. I mean, 51 wins is a lot. Like you're just I guess you're banking on them to me. Their ceiling is a title team. I will admit that, but I guess you're just banking on them being more durable and engaged in the regular season than I am, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that is how I get this wrong. Cause I think undeniably if their best 8 guys, and you might throw Saric in there as 9, and I think Moses Moody is a pretty, reasonably high upside 10th guy. If everybody's healthy, especially the starting 5, there will be stretches of this season where everybody kind of starts having to nudge each other and, saying, are we sure that Phoenix and Denver kind of belong in their own tier? But the odds of that being sustained are pretty low, just because of the age of this team and the injuries that we've already seen with Green as kind of an indispensable piece of this. So yeah, the way this goes wrong for me pretty easily is just guys aren't healthy, and more than most teams, that's a huge concern because of the age here. You got more thoughts here? Shall we do the Houston Rockets next?
Oh, let's do the Houston Rockets. Their over-under is set at, I'm sorry, I scrolled away from the tab. Their over-under set at 31.5. What are you feeling for them?
Narrowly over. I had them for 32. And I had this actually quite a bit higher before I just realized I had too many wins going to the teams in the West. So I just they were one of the unlucky ones that I'd had to knock down. I mean, I think Ime Udoka is a significant, maybe the biggest coaching upgrade anybody made. I don't know what that's worth if you hadn't really changed the roster, but they also changed the roster. Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. So those guys, I think, will sort of keep things just, I don't know, more functional on both ends, really. This team was just total chaos last year, all over the place. So with those two, you also get organic growth from the Jalen Greens, Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson. I don't know what he's going to do as a rookie, but there's reason to believe that independent of the acquisitions they made, this team could just be better because all their early 20-something guys are, a year further into their careers. They also owe that, top 4 protected pick. So like the total bottom out, like, does not really serve them very well. So I think they're just going to try to win just about as much as they can this year. And I guess I have that topping out at 32 wins. So they're not going to be hugely successful, but I don't know. Would you also agree? I'll throw it to you, but do you see like this team could win 40 games, right? Or even more than that, right? Like, isn't there a scenario where Udoka gets them to defend and you have VanVleet and a bunch of the young guys really, like Jalen Green has like the year, like breakout wise, like that's, I think it's possible they go way over this, but I'm only confident enough to go narrowly over.
I mean, maybe 40 seems like it. They're so wildly experimental still, because you look at just like they have they just signed Reggie Bullock for some reason. And so it's like, is he going to play minutes at the wing? What does that mean for Tari Eason? We know Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson will feature prominently. What is their investment in Alperen Şengün? Are they going to be playing Jock Landale a lot? Do we see more Jabari at the 5? I know people have talked about that. Ime Udoka is a good coach, but like this team was just so bad. And they're working off such a low baseline. I am at 31, but we're so close. So I can't see the ceiling of 40, but yeah. I'm going under here. I'm just like, I don't know if it coalesces immediately because they're still going to be so reliant on, even if you think the starting 5, because you have Fred VanVleet in there and Dylan Brooks will be there, that sort of ends up being this net plus unit. We're going to have Amen Thompson then coming in off the bench. And if you're going to give him point guard reps, what does that do? And then I just don't know. Are they built to be good defensively if they're playing either Alperen Şengün heavy minutes? What does Jabari at the 5 units look like defensively? I mean, Jock Landale's he's definitely has more lateral mobility than Alperen Şengün at this point. But if you're playing him over Alperen Şengün, what does that do to your offense? There's so many questions here. I don't expect this team to be, I guess they could, I'm open to the idea that they're better than I'm expecting. Just kind of a 500-ish outcome feels a little steep for them.
Yeah, I'd say that's like the absolute, everything broke right upside. To your point, this was the number 27 defense in the league last year. Their offense was actually mid-pack 14th, or I'm sorry, no, scratch everything I said. Number 29 defense. I don't see how Dylan Brooks and I don't know, maybe Eason plays more, gets them anywhere out of the bottom 10 defensively. And so they're just, your ceiling is what it is if you're not going to stop anybody. Maybe Udoka affects that, but it's hard to climb from that low. I mean, I'm giving them 10 more wins. I should have looked this up, but I don't know that it's pretty rare to see a team add 10 wins, no matter what, unless you're talking about a suddenly formed super team situation. 10 plus 10 is really tough to do.
That would bring us to, now it's the LA Clippers.
Now it is.
They are at 45.5. What do you have for them?
One of my easier unders. And it's just a bet against, or I guess it's a bet on basically the same stuff continuing to happen, which is to say Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, miss time because of scheduled rest, miss time because they're hurt, and this supporting cast just isn't good enough. And, quietly Russell Westbrook really mattered and was helpful for them last year. That's it. I think it did help. It kind of changed what could have been a really ugly, final few chapters of Russ's career by him leaving the Lakers, finding the Clippers, and everyone kind of agreeing oh, this is okay. This is fine. This is solid. But he is one of the most athletically based players of all time. And he's a year older, and that just things happen athletically. And when that's what you depend on, it's hard to sustain it. So I don't expect Westbrook to be as good. I just, this team should have won 40 games last year based on their point differential. They exceeded that by a little bit, I think. I can't even remember what their actual record was. Yeah, 44 last year. So I just don't see a reason to believe they're better. Now, if you go get James Harden, then I guess we have to relitigate this. But for now, I got them at 41-41 and even 500. 3 fewer wins than last year. And I think if I look down my sheet here, I don't have them. I have them 11th in the West. So I don't have the Clippers in the play-in.
Wow. that is a hot take.
How is that hot? They won 44 last year. What's 3 fewer wins?
So you just don't think that there's a chance that Kawhi and PG play in more games this year?
Of course there's a chance, but just historically,
there's a chance.
I mean, anything could happen. I just think it's most likely that they kind of repeat what we've seen the last couple of years.
So I went with 46, which gives them a slight over. So it's not like they're going to smash
this. This is my biggest difference, I think, of any team so far.
Here's what I'm taking in is I just think they're Paul George could play in more games. That'd be huge. They're already talking about playing Terrence Mann more. I think that winds up being a good thing. I don't know if Russell Westbrook is as good for them, but if you think Kawhi and or Paul George is going to miss that time, that actually increases his utility to this team, which could make them better rather than trying to figure out his fit.
Or worse. It might make him worse if he has to play more.
But from my perspective, if I think Kawhi and PG are going to be more available, it absolutely could make them worse.
Yeah.
If you think they're going to be less available, having Westbrook as one of just your top 2 guys because you need him to do all this stuff and be so ball dominant, that works to your advantage rather than trying to get him to fit into a larger context of your team.
I could see that argument. I guess I'd counter to say that I'm not confident he can still, like, that's how he wants to play. And that's how he's always been his best and that's why it didn't work in LA, because he's the third wheel. And I mean, with the Lakers and to a lesser extent, when you've paired him with other stars post OKC, I just think like he might not be able to do that. That might be the better version of him, but I don't know that better version of him is necessarily helpful. But that's totally hypothetical. So why else? Is it just PG and Kawhi as much as anything for you going over?
So the other thing is, I don't know if it's going to be James Harden. This team is going to make a trade this year.
You're right.
They are so all in. They can trade 2 first-round picks, which I don't know if I've corrected myself. I said way back when that they could only trade 1 first-round pick over the offseason. That's bothered me that I never corrected myself in the podcast. It was 2. They can trade up to 2 firsts, 2 swaps. They have salary matching contracts. If it's the right fit, Terrence Mann could be. Look, maybe this is too out there. This could be a Pascal Siakam team once he inevitably hits the block in Toronto, because they're just a dumpster fire at this point. You get 2 firsts, 2 swaps for Pascal Siakam, and they're willing to put Terrence Mann on the table. I don't necessarily know distant Clippers picks. I don't know which team. Maybe a team beats that, but I'm saying they have the equity, the pick equity. I think the 2 firsts are enough, especially when you look at how all in they are on the next couple years, to go out and get another dude. And I hope, for the sake of my over-under pick, it's not James Harden, because that's not the dude that I think. I mean, regular season, he probably gets them there. But looking at the playoff ceiling, probably not. I expect them, like, they're not just going to sit here unless they are so far gone that it's like, well, no, like, we got to hit reset. Like, we're going to trade Kawhi and PG and try and recoup picks. They're going to make a trade. I don't know who the player is, but the bigger names that become available, they're going to be involved. And I think they'll be good enough. If you even have a 1-star availability, which is basically what they have, that's 44 games right there, 43, 44. I'm just trying to be like, oh, they'll find another 2 to 3 wins somewhere.
I think the likelihood of them making a trade is the most significant factor in your case versus mine. What do you make of the fact, though, that they have not, both Leonard and George are extension eligible. They have not extended them. It doesn't seem like there's been any serious talk about that. I wonder if that makes it less likely that they're going to be selling off their last 2 future first rounders for win now help. I know they got to open the new arena in a year. So like the argument has always been, well, they got to have their superstars around for that. I just wonder, I guess I put it this way. If they had already extended George and Leonard, it would make me more confident that they were going to make a trade that cost them their last couple of future firsts, because you're really all in on this core again. The fact that they haven't just gives me a little bit of pause as to this team's like ultimate goal, because I think if it does, go bad over the first half of the season or up to the trade deadline, I don't think it's ridiculous to start looking around and seeing what can we get for these 2 guys. Cause clearly, this is year 5 and it just hasn't really worked. So, that's a big enough sample to sort of make a judgment on. I'm going to stay where I'm at, but I definitely am much more nervous about it, because you make a good case for the over here.
You want to move on to the Los Angeles Lakers?
Let's do it.
They are set at 47.5. Where do you land on them?
Well, I didn't know the over-under when I made this pick. I have them at 47, so I guess I'm an under there, but by the smallest margin possible. I think I want to say they had the number 2 net rating in the league after they, remade their team at the deadline last year.
Oh, I can't wait to get into this.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait either, because you have a mischievous grin right now. So I view that as evidence that this team should be good. I'm now wondering, what are you going to say? Did they play a shitty schedule? Did teams shoot badly against them during that stretch?
With the caveat that you have them, you said 47, right?
47, yeah. 47.
So we are in perfect lockstep here.
Okay.
I have them at 47 as well, which is an under. Here's my thing, and this is not you, and you're already approaching it the right way because you have them as the under. If any other team that started the season 2-10 went 18-8 with the league's best defense after the trade deadline, we'd be gushing skepticism. This is supposed to be the segment of the season where not everyone's trying. Because it's the Lakers, though, this is just evidence of a 2024 champion in waiting. Austin Reeves is going to win most improved player. Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, Jackson Hayes are all going to be reborn. Could we stop? LeBron is, and look, yes, the Lakers did play above 500. Here's the other thing. They played above 500 basketball after that 2-10 start. They still had a bottom 10 point differential, and it was in the negatives because that's what a bottom 10 point differential is. And now you're getting into the questions of Anthony Davis was your best player last year, your most valuable player. I think that's fair to say. Can you count on him to both be your best player while appearing in enough games for that to matter? And then how much of a workload can age 39 season LeBron just handle? We saw him deal with ankle stuff last year. There was, the efficiency declined on the jumper. He's going to pick his spots more often. And the other thing I just want to point out is how much goodwill does almost not getting swept by the Nuggets in the conference finals buy you? Like, the Lakers can be a very good basketball team. I like the Gabe Vincent addition. Love Taurean Prince. I make fun of Austin Reeves win most improved player. It actually wouldn't shock me if he did. No. I think people tend to think he's overrated because he's a Laker. I just don't think that's the case. For our full thoughts, you may see the Lakers look ahead, which is on our YouTube and podcast channels. I'm just like, what are we doing? We're of the mind, Denver punted on last year because they didn't care the last month and a half. And it's, we can't read into Team X. We always see these Julian Champagny averaging 20 plus points a game for the Spurs. Like, that doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Just because it's the Lakers and it happens during that period of time? I'm sorry. It doesn't mean they're bad. It wouldn't shock me if they hit this over, but we're all of a sudden just, this is a contender now.
Yeah, I think it is a little more complicated. That wasn't me calling out you,
by the way, because we have the same win total.
I know, right?
It's been bothering me for a bit.
Well, no, I think I think you're right. Like, we always do, like Anthony Simons averaged 1 million points and shot 1,000,000% a couple of years ago down the stretch. I mean, Shaedon Sharpe, I think we both like those guys, but it's always whatever you do at the end of a season, we should devalue it because you never know. Some teams have packed it in, are resting guys, or whatever. The Lakers are a little bit different because they had to really hustle to win games, and their roster was meaningfully altered after the deadline. Like, those are the distinctions, but I take you're right. Like, if you don't get to disregard 2 and 10 and put all your stock in 18 and whatever, like, because
the thing I just want to point a hole in my case, LeBron did miss time during that stretch. And so it's like 18 and 8.
Is he not going to miss time?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, now we're just like arguing against each other for no reason. No, the last thing about this though, you say, okay, it's age, whatever, 39 season for LeBron. Is he going to stay as healthy? And it, like, to me, the answer is, I mean, it matters if he does, but odds are he's also just going to be slightly worse when he is healthy. So whether you're losing production from actual games missed or decline in games in contributions during games played, you're losing either way. Like, the odds of every year a guy gets older, the odds of him equaling or surpassing what he did the year before, with some limited exceptions for like serious injury, like, they just go down because that's what happens. You get worse as you get older, whether that means you don't play or you play worse. Like, there's only 2 ways it goes, and they're both bad. So yeah, but 47 wins for the Lakers. That's a playoff team. And then lastly, you would agree, because I think this is the case, that they are one of those teams that's just way more dangerous in a playoff series than they are as a regular season team.
Yeah. And they're also and I think the West has a lot of these teams where you could say, the range of outcomes between their floor and ceiling is just so wide. If you told me they missed the playoffs, I'd be like, okay. If you told me they finished with the best record in the West, I'd probably be like, no, all right. Like, I just,
yeah, right. Big variance for sure.
I think this is going to be a shocking reveal. The Memphis Grizzlies. I think we're getting the Memphis Grizzlies. We're at 45.5. And I think we'll start with you, as we've been doing with this podcast. I did hijack one team. I think it might've been the Nuggets. I always hijack the Nuggets.
That's okay.
I apologize. 45.5. Where are you at with the Grizzlies? And please do not take me cracking open some caffeine right now as a sign that you're not keeping me energetic. I'm just very tired.
I take it as a sign that you're trying to steel yourself against potentially going over on a team you always underrate. But I don't know if that's the case. I got Memphis going over, and I have them for 48 wins, which is one more than we had the Lakers for. The Ja suspension looms large, especially because Tyus Jones isn't there. And I think you and I both have real questions about Marcus Smart's ability to basically be Ja Morant and Tyus Jones, and then also be Dillon Brooks. That's a heavy lift for a guy that was, I think most people would agree, a reduced version of himself last year. Like decline might be setting in.
Right.
So that's a problem. And Jaren Jackson misses significant time basically every year, except for one, 21-22. I think he was relatively healthy. All that said, I think Desmond Bane is a stud, and I think he's going to matter more in the non-jaw portion of the season than anybody else. And I think he's up for the challenge of kind of running the offense like a fair amount. I think the defense will be awesome again. Steven Adams missed a ton of time last year. If he gives them a few more games, I think that really matters. And look, I'm giving them 48 wins. They won 51 last year. So I'm knocking them down, but I'm still going over. I think this team has the potential to be, this is an anti-Lakers situation. I think they could be phenomenal in the regular season, despite Morant missing time. And then I just don't really care. I don't view them as a playoff threat. So we at least have gone the other way on one team finally.
So for the first time in the history of over-unders on this podcast, this is the 5th year we're doing it, over-unders. The podcast is pretty old, though, by the way. You've been on it, you know.
Almost as old as your hatred of Memphis, but go ahead.
It's not hate. It's just perpetual doubt and skepticism.
Yeah, skepticism.
I'm going over. 45.5 feels a scotch too low, and it keeps in theme with, I just have so much parity up and down the West. I can't just give the Grizzlies the shaft. The John Morant suspension, though, could completely turn things. There are a couple of factors, though, that I think people have not considered yet. And then I don't think to step on the toes of anything that you pointed out. They were missing Steven Adams towards the end of last year, and he's just a very big part of what they do on offense because they couldn't rely on offensive rebounds as much. However, their offense was pretty good during that stretch because they brought in Luke Kennard, who really opened up things in the half court. I'm with you on Desmond Bane, have nothing to add there. I think the Jaren Jackson Jr., I think he could probably give you a little bit more on offense. The defense, it's probably better during the time that Ja's out. During those, like that, they might have like the second or third best defense in the league during that stretch.
Yeah.
And so I think it really just comes down to a bet of how well do you think they're treading water without him offensively? And I think they can do it. I don't know if they'll be like decidedly league average every single night, but I think they now have more ways, thanks to Luke Kennard, and then you can more easily play Marcus Smart with, if you wanted to, Derrick Rose. Then like you can't do that with Trey Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like even Desmond Bane, it could be a little bit small before. And now it's Marcus Smart is small, but he'll defend fours. And so I feel better about them as a regular season team. I could see it all going wrong where one, like maybe the offense just doesn't have enough juice. Like Marcus Smart regresses. Desmond Bane is like, what if he's just a little bit worse because he was so good last year?
Sure.
So I could see it going off the rails a little bit. So I think this team has more combustibility potential than a lot of these other teams, but I have to trust, even they weren't great last year without Ja. They were around like 500 and their point differential wasn't fantastic when you look at the games he missed. I think they have enough to do it even in the West. And because I went over, this is terrible news for Grizzlies fans because they have cleared the over in at least the past 4 seasons because I've gone under every single year. Here's fun fact though. When we recorded the Grizzlies pod, they were at 46.5. So I had them penciled in at 46 wins. I don't know if I said that I had the 46. So they would have been another under if their win total, as of we're recording this on October 10th, these are when the wins are accurate by, if that win total didn't go down by a full victory.
So you've really backed into an over here. That's fine. Just a couple things as you were talking that, you know, I could imagine someone saying, well, Brandon Clark is going to miss the year. That matters. I think Santi Aldama, and we've talked to Keith Parrish about this on the Grizzlies Look Ahead. Santi Aldama is someone that just like could very easily just slot in and play as big or bigger of a role than Clark did and be better. Like I think there's that kind of optimism surrounding his game.
And also, I won't give up on Zaire Williams. You can say that he doesn't have feel, but you know what? Kelly Oubre Jr. has carved out a nice career without having any feel.
That's true. So, the last thing I'd say is, I think, and you hit on it, we both mentioned him, Steven Adams, especially during the non-Morant portion of the season, like we saw the Knicks, I think, were 20th in effective field goal percentage last year and were the number 2 offense because they get offensive boards. And Steven Adams kind of is that for the Grizzlies, where he will generate possessions as good shots as a screener and extra possessions as an offensive rebounder. So if Morant is not there, his value just, you know, skyrockets because he's going to get you the extra couple of garbage buckets a game by knocking guys over, tipping balls in, or getting you second shots, you know, off offensive boards. So if he goes down while Morant is out, the offense could really be a problem. But as long as he's there, I think the floor is actually, you know, mid tier, I would say. And then Morant gets back and maybe you're pushing up towards top 10 offensively.
We are entering a portion of the podcast where the win total over-unders are not going to change. So as we move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're at 44.5. What do you have for them?
I got them going over. I have them for 46. This is just very much right in the soft middle here. I think
that phrase.
I think Towns missed a ton of time. I think if he's there, the offense is better. I think everyone is in agreement that Anthony Edwards is going to continue to improve. I think, the party line about this team being terribly disappointing last year was, we didn't really get to see enough of all the key guys together. That's a lazy cop-out, but it's also true. So I think, and maybe what we'll learn is that actually they're not very good together if you play them all for a sustained stretch. I think it's more likely that Towns, Gobert, Edwards, McDaniels, Conley is like a really good 5-man unit, and they fill in around it with, enough decent contributions from bench guys. I also am just kind of optimistic about Conley just being better than Russell for this team for a full year. Injury risks abound with him, but and they do for everybody on this team to some extent. I think Gobert is at an age where things could go sideways. Towns has missed time. I just think they're, they won 41 last year. I think given all that happened, this isn't like a huge jump. It's not like I need everything to break perfectly for 46 wins to happen here. What do you think?
I have them at 47, so I'm just with you on this. And I think you pointed out everything, so I don't want to regurgitate what you said, but we can't emphasize enough how much we still don't know about this team, because their best 5-man unit played in 7 games together all of last season due to injuries, trades, well-constructed walls. When you look at what happened with Jaden McDaniels. So I think that could be an excellent 5-man unit. And then you start to get into just the expanse of their roster. A healthy Naz Reid, he was so good last year. I don't think people understand how much of just an offensive floor game he has, where the dual big minutes don't look great, but there's a pathway to them working no matter what combination you're kind of throwing them out there. I do think Nickeil Alexander-Walker was actually pretty effective for them when he came over last year. You know that. They have Kyle Anderson. That's a big deal. And so I think you probably stretch 8 guys during the regular season that you can trust to come in there and give you really rock solid minutes. And that's without considering, do things break right with Shake Milton? Do they break right with Troy Brown Jr. at all for you? I think this is another team, though, that does have some combustibility when you start to get into the questions, where Anthony Edwards, we've talked about how great he is on this podcast. We need to see a very extended stretch where he puts everything together. The defense, the finishing, the passing, enters the all-NBA fray. Does he do that this year? How much can Towns hold up defensively at the 4? I mean, defensively in general, but how much can he play the 4? Is Jaden McDaniels okay with probably seeing his offensive usage go down from last year just because Karl-Anthony Towns missed so much time? And the other thing, Rudy Gobert has said that he worked on catching and finishing in different ways. And we all saw the video of him just annihilating Derek Lively in the post during preseason. I am at once intrigued by if Rudy Gobert can actually catch, hold on to the ball, be more of a reliable finisher when it's not comes to just dunking. But it's also what does that embolden him to try? I don't want to see him posting up that much in the regular season. I don't think it gets to that point. But this team still, as much as they're combustible, we said this last year, and I'm not gonna predict it. We were sipping all of the Minnesota Timberwolves Kool-Aid last year. This is still a team that could be really ridiculously stand out in the West if everything hits for them.
Yeah, I think to that point, because you have both them and the Lakers at 47 wins, right? I'm right there with you. I think you'd be more surprised if the Lakers won 54 games than the Wolves, right? Just because of the different types of upside that these two teams have.
Yeah, I actually would be. Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it. We are on to the New Orleans Pelicans, 44.5, Grant. Over or under? What are you taking?
Under. I have them at 42 wins, which is exactly what they won last year. I would love to get, more, and which is insane. I think they had the differential of a 45 win team last year. So, and Zion basically didn't play. So I'm going under what they should have done last year by a decent amount. And it's It is I need to see Williamson just be healthy. I need to see it before and this time next year, if he puts in a healthy season and if he does, he makes all NBA almost certainly, then I'll, adjust things upward. I just need to see it before I predict it's going to happen. We've got too many seasons stacked up now of him just not staying healthy. So that's, I mean, I don't know how much farther I need to go there. I guess I also am not confident that this can be the number 6 defense again. So those are my 2 main points. I'll throw it to you though, because I know, I think as we were kind of looking at them as, oh my God, are they the second best team in the West at early points last year? I think you were leading that charge, and we're not wrong, but I needed more convincing. So you got to be higher on the Pelicans than me, right? 42 is a low win total.
I have 45,
okay.
And it's just, I want to predict them so much higher because I think that the ceiling is there, but the Zion Williamson availability stuff matters. What does Trey Murphy look like when he comes back from his meniscus injury? You mentioned the defense is a concern, and I think they'll still figure out ways to do it. But if they're planning on playing allegedly Zion at the 5 more, that's going to disrupt your base defense in a lot of ways, unless he's ready to be that primary rim protector, which he did improve last year defensively, but he was not that guy. That was not his role. And so, yeah, having Herb Jones helps. You can get to a bunch of different lineups. If Jose Alvarado's healthy, that really pitches in. The numbers when they play together, these top players, they're blowing teams off the court, but CJ, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson have played fewer than 200 minutes together since the CJ McCollum trade because Zion didn't play at all in 22-23. It's just, it looms over. And here's the other thing I don't trust is that even if they're playing really well, I do not trust this organization to then treat itself like that and go out and make a move that would, in theory, nudge up the ceiling of its roster. Because I think if you look at their top 6 guys, if everybody stays healthy, you probably talk yourself in 47, 48 wins. Here's the thing. Even let's throw Larry Nance Jr. in there. Your 7 guys. No, you're not all going to stay healthy because look at who your top 7 guys are. Zion has he's basically missed 2/3 of his career of the games that he's been eligible to play. Brandon Ingram has dealt with stuff over the past few years. We've now Trey Murphy is dealing with stuff. And Larry Nance Jr. is pretty injury prone himself. There's always something going on with this team. And if you told me that they were a front office that was going to act aggressively, like they had this fringe contender on their hands and they understood the urgency with which they should probably operate inside the Zion Williamson window, I might be more inclined to juice up their win total. I'm still going over. I mean, 45 wins is an insult, but I don't have confidence to go much higher than that, looking at the durability of their core. And then, okay, if they want to improve, because we didn't hear any rumblings. It's not, aside from them looking at trying to trade up for Scoot Henderson, there was nothing about them trying to be more aggressive in acquiring a rim protector on the trade market, more shooting on the trade market, a floor general on the trade market. And that just makes me uncomfortable. I'm not saying they should have blown up this team, but to not even hear rumblings was just, it's unsettling for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think another angle to consider is, even if we just put the injury stuff aside, which you really can't, but let's just hypothetically, for the sake of argument, do that. I think still it's just not, and I know the numbers were really good when everybody was healthy. I think I still have a hard time seeing how a team with a lot of one-way guys can put together lineups that can both defend adequately and keep the floor spaced for Zion to really kind of, bust loose. Because if you have McCollum and you have Ingram and you have Zion, and then you got Herb Jones to defend, but if Herb Jones is on the floor, I think he's going to get left, and then there's going to be an extra defender in the lane. But if you go with someone who can shoot, if that's Trey Murphy, then you compromise your defense a little bit. There's just, Murphy. I think Murphy is quietly such a swing piece for this team. Everybody was gushing about breakout potential. I think that's legit. He's just going to be playing catch up coming off this meniscus. It's just hard. Dyson Daniels can really guard. Can he score? Can he shoot? I just think there's too many guys that they take one thing off the table for every one thing they put on. And because Zion is such a weird player to build around, that those sort of the one-way tendencies of so many guys on this roster kind of get, the spotlight shines on them a little brighter. So the health is the obvious way to get to and under, which is kind of the route I went. But even just from a roster construction standpoint, I think there are still some kind of needles to thread here that are a little tricky.
On to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Grant, guess what? Their over-under is 44.5.
Oh, God. So we talked about this a little bit. I'm under, but I have them at 44 wins. So again, I'm really close to the line. That's 4 more games than they won last year. I think this is a team, and we're recording this a day after Chet Holmgren looked pretty darn good against Victor Wembanyama in their first preseason game. I think he might really help defensively right away and really might space the floor and really might be just the rare impact, quote unquote, rookie, even though he kind of redshirted or really did redshirt last year with the foot injury. I hate being under this, but I got to just stick to it. 44-38. SGA is going to be awesome. Jalen Williams is going to be awesome. I think the West is just too crowded for me to get them up towards like 50 or something, where I think a lot of people have said this is the team that's going to make the huge leap. We've even talked about it. I'm trying to be measured here.
Do you know who has said the Thunder aren't going to make a huge leap?
You.
No, Sam Presti. Literally just came out. I thought he phrased it well on media day. He talked about they've probably already borrowed some wins from the future. Looking at last season, I think the thing he said was, I'm actually reading the quote now. It's from the Oklahoman. You can't buy the paint for your house that you haven't bought yet. You don't know where the house is. You don't know what style it is. You don't know how much paint you'll need. We don't really know what we have right now. I think this is part of the headwinds that you face as a young team. I wouldn't want to cash in our trade assets to become average or above average. Here's what that tells me, along with them bringing over Micic and also trading up for Case and Wallace. This is not going to be a team that is seeking out victories actively again. I don't expect it to be a situation where they're shutting down guys unless things go completely off the rails and someone gets injured. But that, again, that's the caveat for everyone. They are so invested in the bigger picture. It even comes down to look at what they did where they're trading out some of these more imminent picks for these distant first round picks. They're not planning to be there. They might be that good. And you know what's going to happen? They could be on pace for, if they played, if they played an 8-man rotation that you could build yourself right now, their best, and they're all doing really well, they're not going to just play those 8 guys. Like we've seen Mark Daniels is going to probably try and play everybody. And you know what? When you look at who's on this roster, we need to look at Micic. We need to look at Case and Wallace. We need more of a look at Ousmane Dieng. When Poku's healthy, like they still seem like they want to fit him in. And the other thing here is, so I think that they are going to experiment their way out of wins. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't think you're going to see them sit their key guys during crunch time, but I just think there might be fewer crunch time, high leverage moments because of the experimentation. The other thing here is everything went right from a developmental perspective last year. What if Josh Giddey doesn't improve this year? He improved so much last year. What if he doesn't this year? What if Jalen Williams struggles to kind of find his place in the offense now when you have Josh Giddey, Shea, and Chet Holmgren kind of entering the fold? And maybe you want to put the ball in Ousmane Dieng's hands a little bit. There's just so much. This roster is so good, but we don't know how it's going to look from a consistency perspective because we haven't seen a lot of these players play together yet. Like Ousmane Dieng was injured for so much of last year, and this has nothing of Chet Holmgren. And the Thunder aren't just, to step on the toes of what I already said, they're not just going to play their top 7 or like I've talked myself into thinking like there's just a chance that Lou Dort does not play nearly as many minutes because like they're just trying to get a feel for all these other different guards that they have on there or players who can play like position or like size players that are on their team. I have them at 42 wins. I hate going below this because I think the Thunder have the brightest future in the NBA. That's like, we haven't recorded a podcast like that, but like if you're trying to pick anything after 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like I'm just going to pick the Thunder, I think, consistently to have the brightest future. It's just they don't care as much about the here and now as some of these other teams. And if they are even on track to be a top 6 seed, I don't think that's going to impact how they're running their rotations, how they're trying to discover more about what they have in some of these other guys, some of these other lineup combinations. And I think that ends up costing them wins. Finally, we're going to say this so many times, the West is just going to be tougher this year, or it should be tougher. And so that could provide some natural pullback.
I'd be a little concerned too. I know I just talked up Chet as one of the first things I said, but like, you know, they also started Case and Wallace because SGA sat against the Spurs in that preseason game. And I don't think it's going to be the last time we see a rookie point guard and a rookie center on the floor together. And so just defensively, as good as potentially both of those guys are going to be, and like, that's just, those are tough spots to have bookended by rookies. I mean, as good as they might be, that's just, yeah, I can't get quite as you know, down to you at a 42. But yeah, I think everything you said does point to, and I think we agree too. They got they're not going to trade a bunch of those picks in season for a star upgrade. They're like the last team in the world that's going to do that. So like the ceiling of this team is basically wholly dependent on how much better its current talent gets year over year, which like we like their talent. I just can't get to the like, 50 plus win upside that I think it's tempting, right? It's tempting because we like so many of their guys, but that's a little bit of a bridge too far for me.
The Phoenix Suns, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Alphabet, I got you down. They were tough for me. They're at 52.5. Where did you land on them?
I got them under. I got them at 49. That's 4 more wins than last year, although that matters less for this team than a lot of them because the roster's so different. It's it's a little bit of a broken record. I think they're bigger name guys. Certainly Kevin Durant is going to miss time. He just always does. That's priced in. Their depth issues. I know we love all their minimum guys, but they're still minimum guys. And if you have, 6 or 7 guys that are really awesome 7th or 8th men, that doesn't mean that they're suddenly great when they're, 4th and 5th options. So I think the fact that they just hit home runs, relatively speaking, on all these minimums, we need to temper that a little bit with the fact that like these guys were signed for the minimum. It's not so simple as now you've got a full rotation because you did well at prices that are supposed to get you the last guys on your roster, and you're going to depend on Yuta Watanabe, and you're going to depend on Eric Gordon, you're going to depend on Keita Bates-Diop a lot, Josh Okogie, like all these guys that are making nothing. It's a lot to ask for them, even around a core as starry as this one, to really, play like true starters and true, 6 men. I also kind of think the regular season doesn't matter to these guys. I think this is another team where the thinking will be, let's get to the postseason with KD, Booker, and Bradley Beal healthy, and we'll take our chances. So, in January, February, March, we're not going to really be gunning for wins that might put us up to 53 and get us over if it's at the expense of like the long view for this team. Because this is the ultimate championship or bust team because they don't have any picks and they don't have any flexibility. And it's just, you have to make the playoffs and succeed. You can't, care about winning a couple extra regular season games. So I think that also pushes their number down for me.
I went over at 53 and I was a little bit reticent to do this, but I started going through and I only had 5 teams in the West hitting me over. And I don't even know if that's like physically possible. Here was my thought on it. Do you remember when the Nets had Kyrie, KD, and James Harden? When they were available, they just looked like gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Why should this team be any different? Is it because they don't have Nick Claxton at center? Is it just like I know we have questions about their depth, but it's like the Nets weren't working with world-beating depth after the James Harden trade. They had the pieces to go out and get James Harden. Is it just like, I'm just like this core? So these 3, I would trust to be more available than those 3 at that time, knowing what we knew about COVID then and Kyrie, and then even James Harden, all that high usage from his years in Houston, whereas Bradley Beal's coming from a Washington team that I think if they didn't suck the past 2 years, he probably plays in more than I think he's played 90 total games the past 2 seasons. And so I'm just wondering, is it because Kevin Durant's older? Is it because they don't have like that traditional floor general that I don't really think that they need when all these guys are available? Is it because they're so new to each other? It's why will this team not be one of the 2 best teams in the Western Conference during the regular season?
I think the Durant being older is one factor. I know these are rhetorical. I think that's one thing that does it for me. Didn't that Nets team have like Joe Harris and Seth Curry, and you mentioned Claxton, and I do think, all I did was just minimize the importance of all these end of roster, minimum signing guys. But I still think they're just, I'm making my own point again, I guess. They're worse than the supporting cast in Brooklyn. But I think you're right. Like, you could definitely make the argument that this top 3 is better and maybe could be more durable than the Brooklyn one. And certainly, I don't know, more reliable generally because James Harden and Kyrie are not involved. But yeah, do you think
you mentioned Seth Curry, and I'm like, well, they have Grayson Allen, who's a better defender than Seth Curry. So like, what is like?
Well, let me ask you this: do you think, because this is, I think, maybe kind of low key one of the biggest drivers of us being a part on this team. Do you think they're going to care about the regular season? Not like totally quit, at the end of the year or Denver it or whatever, but like, do you think seeding really matters to them?
I guess less so than other teams who are trying to look to make a statement, but like a lot of these, like Kevin Durant's just been so unavailable the past few years. I just feel like that's going to factor into his mindset. Devin Booker's just not the type of player to turn it off during the regular season either. Yeah. And then Bradley Beal is toting all sorts of burdens of proof. People made fun of him because first of all, it wasn't legally possible, but he thought Devin Booker was going to be traded in like the deal for him. It was like, do you not know where you stand in the league's pecking order right now? What's going on here? And so he's now playing on a team that's up against actual stakes for the first time in a half decade?
A long time.
To your point, it's like they're relying on a lot of sort of wild cards, but I don't love the DeAndre Ayton trade for them. It was very much read if we just want out of the DeAndre Ayton business any way we can get there. But I'm like, I actually like Nas Little and Grayson Allen a lot more than like some of the other minimum. Like I like Nas Little more than a Keita Bates-Diop. Just trusting him as like, if he's healthy, going to actually shoot well enough to contribute on offense, not hurt you on defense. And I know Keita Bates-Diop won't hurt you on defense. Or Grayson Allen is just like, that is someone, this isn't Landry Shamet. Like he's a more bankable shooter where he's not going to go through so many of those highs and lows. And I think that while they may have made themselves worse at the top, so let's look at that 4th or 5th spot, like because of the trickle down effect of now, well, Yuta Watanabe's your 8th most important player instead of your 6th. There's the same thing with Eric Gordon. I think they've kind of fortified that. Okay, you have your top 3. It's, are we really comfortable with like who's our 4th and 5th and maybe 6th most important? I'd be like, 7, 8, and 9. Like that makes a lot of sense. So that's where I'm at with them. And I think that just in the Western Conference, as deep as it is, it feels like there's a lack of could be dominant teams. Phoenix and Denver are the 2 could be dominant teams. And so I couldn't slot them under 50. And then in full disclosure, I had them at 51 maybe or 50. I can't remember what it was. And I was just like, I have no one clearing their over in the West. And so I went back and I was like, this is the team that I think could do it. And so I went to 53 with them.
Yeah, I don't have that problem because I gave the Warriors 7 extra wins over last year and got them up to 51.
Also, Jonathan Kuminga is one of the most bankable rotation players in the NBA, as we all know.
Lock it in. You know what I'm realizing too is that I really like the Suns, the Durant missing time habitually now at this stage of his career. Like that's an example of me like maybe giving too much weight to, well, this guy's he's getting to that point in his career where he's going to miss time. I did it for several teams and I just didn't do it for the Warriors. So everybody just understand that you can't trust anything I say. Very different team next is the Portland Trailblazers. You want me to go first or do you have some thoughts?
Can I actually ask you a very quick question? How many wins did you have the Thunder getting again so I can mark it down?
I have them at 44.
44. Okay, that's a lot. Please carry on though. We are on the Portland Trailblazers and Grant, their win total is 44. No, it's 28 and a half.
Yeah. We get a break from the mid 40s. Yeah. 28 and a half. I swear I didn't look at the over unders. I'm over this total, which makes me 1, uncomfortable, but 2, slightly less uncomfortable because I have them at 29 wins. So as narrowly over as possible. There's not a lot of complicated analysis here. This seems incredibly young and is one of the only ones, maybe the only one in the West, depending on how you feel about the Spurs, that is just like, we're starting over. We don't care about wins, and we are going to play a ton of young guys at, primary ball handling positions. And so our offense might be awesome to look at occasionally, but probably won't be good. And defensively, we are going to be rough. I still love Scoot Henderson. I think he's going to be a, capital S star, but he'll be a rookie and he's in charge of a team that just is young and certainly like unfinished. I think more moves are ahead and they probably will not be, in prime veteran talent adding moves. So I don't see an easy way for this team to be outside the, bottom half offensively and like probably bottom 10 defensively. So I think it's going to be just because of the guard rotation. I think like Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton could clean up a lot, assuming Williams is healthy. Jeremy Grant, I think, is an overrated defender, but is okay. But like if you're playing Scoot, Simons, and Sharp together a fair amount, that's like There are no stops there in that lineup.
Right. Wow. I'm actually surprised you're this high. So I have them at 23 wins.
That's so low.
Well, here's the thing. They have talent. What is the guiding principle of this team? They're going to play fast. They're going to be wildly inefficient. What are they defensively? Jeremy Grant is going to finish the season on a different team. Malcolm Brogdon will probably finish the season on a different team. Are you prepared to say that both DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams III finish the season in Portland? Are you prepared to say that DeAndre Ayton is good? Like, is he going to look? No, and this is going to come off as a joke, and it is, but are we going to get a sort of a reinvigorated DeAndre Ayton, or is he about to set the single season record for post-ups in transition? Like, are we just assuming that because he's leaving Phoenix, everything's going to be fine and he's coming back? This guy pulled back a bunch last year, and now he has less talented table setters to get him his looks on offense. And so we're going to see a whole bunch about his self-creation game, maybe. And the other thing I'll throw, two other things. Well, all right, I have a few things to throw at you. One, the learning curve for rookie point guards, like, is Scoot Henderson going to come in and just be Luka Doncic? I just no. So why is the offense going to be good? And you mentioned, they're not going to get stops with Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson. Are they going to get made shots? Anthony Simons will make shots. What is going to Scoot's pull-up jumper going to, again, I think Scoot ends up being all NBA caliber player. This is year one, and there's still so many question marks with Shaedon Sharpe. What is he defensively? Can he Google what an assist is? Like, what is his shot making going to look like on this team? So the more I go through it, there are too many. Like, you have to answer so many of the best case outcomes in the affirmative for them to get to even 30 wins. And the final thing I'll say here, Joe Cronin's not going to let that happen. This is not I think they're closer to being what I believe the Washington Wizards will be this year, which is we are not fucking allowing team to win X amount of wins, rather than, they could be Utah because we underestimated how much actual NBA talent they have on this roster. I think the difference between them and Utah of last year is Utah didn't necessarily go into the season leaning on a bunch of all these wild card youngsters.
Yeah.
There are going to be two very prominent ones in Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson. And I think giving them agency over the offense, very good for the long term, winds up pulling you back in the short term. And so I know they have some, and I'm just not a DeAndre Ayton believer right now. So I'm very comfortably under. Also, I needed to take wins from somewhere. Like, once you're under on the Blazers, why are you going to stop yourself from going lower and lower?
Yeah, I realize you put me in the position of having to talk up a team that I have losing 53 games, which is a weird spot to be in. But I think you're right. I think this might be, I don't think we've really swayed each other too much, but I guess I'm trying to justify why I have them at 29. And I think some of it is, I feel like there's an outside shot that Scoot is one of the rare rookies that's really good, even though I'm just arguing against myself at this point. How about this? Because I do need to shave some wins off, and this is one of the few teams where we can do it. I'm going to adjust this to 27 and 55, which puts me under. So let's go with that. I'm still 4 wins ahead of you on Portland, but I feel a little more comfortable because you're right.
Going though?
Well, I think because the West is how it is, there are only going to be a couple teams that haven't clear incentive to bottom out, and this is just one of them. So I think I'm going. I feel better about the under. If anything, I'm probably not going low enough. But you've swayed me. This is our first convincing of this exercise so far.
I'm curious to see where we land on this next team. And I know you have friends that listen that will probably hate you if you don't pick the over on the Sacramento Kings. But the Sacramento Kings are, Grant.
Yeah.
Guess what their over-under set at?
44.5.
That is the Sacramento Kings, 44.5. You going over or under?
Is everybody listening right now? Should we pause for a second? I have them over. I have the Kings going over 44.5 because I have them with 45 wins, which is probably way too low for a lot of people. I think I will note, I think a Keegan Murray leap could change this because he's, on the short list of most pivotal players in the league, could really elevate this team's ceiling if he plays anything like he did in summer league, and was just a no-brainer first team all rookie guy. So that's a variable here. Ultimately, I think I'm taking 2 wins off their total from last year. It's all about not believing in their ability to stay as absurdly healthy as they did last season.
Everybody can I interject there for a minute? Did you know that they had Domas Sabonis and other players who labored through injuries, and that they're the first team in NBA fucking history to ever have players who did that?
Never happened
Did you know
before.
that, Grant?
Nobody's ever played hurt, Dan. The Kings invented playing hurt. Isn't that cool? I mean, Sabonis, kudos to him, because that does sound like that was really painful injury.
We talked to Greg Wissinger, and who mentioned that he played through, and Greg was right. I'm not even trolling him. It's just the amount of Kings fans were like, that is so misleading. We had guys playing through injuries. Like, yeah, every other team was 100% healthy all year.
That's going, like, your bias is showing, I think, if that's your response to everybody played minimum of 73 games and like a bunch of guys played 75 plus. That just doesn't happen, like, ever. So maybe they'll play hurt again. I don't know. I just, like, it's just, they're going to lose more man games, and they'll be from guys that matter. So that might cost them 2 wins on its own. Also, the defense is, I don't see a reasonable case for the defense being better, other than, especially if they lose guys to injury, but other than, like, it's another year under Mike Brown, and they're going to just know the system better. That's just not super persuasive to me. So I just think they're a little bit worse. I still have them, 7th in the West, but the difference between that and 3rd is basically nothing. So I have them. It's over, but it's not exactly like a ringing endorsement going over.
I have them under at 44. And so I have them be up.
Everybody hear that? All the Kings fans hear that? Dan is lower than me on Sacramento.
I have them winning 4 fewer games. The West is, as I've said ad nauseum at this point, is just tougher. I think that I think it's a reasonable bet to say that Harrison Barnes or Domas Sabonis or Keegan Murray or De'Aaron Fox might play in fewer games than they did last season. I don't necessarily love what they did over the offseason, where they very much leaned into their offensive model. And now anyone who claims that I don't watch Kings games or pay attention, I've been on this podcast that they had pretty good defensive indicators. They forced teams to go deep into the shot clock. They're going to get rebounds. They can get their defense set. But, like, talent on the defensive end is going to matter at some point. And they don't have it. And yes, they put up a nice fight against the Warriors in the first round. They also still lost. So then the Warriors went and got trounced by the Lakers. And so it's just, I think this team is very good. I do, what I will say, and I maybe did not account for this possibility enough. You mentioned the Keegan Murray leap. That's one. I just don't know if that leap comes on the defensive end, which is where I think that's where they have the most room for improvement, is how many more games you're just going to outscore your opponents off the floor. Like, their offensive ceiling, how much higher is it, is my point. I honestly don't know.
No, I was going to say, like, I was going to put it to you, like, well, what is the argument for them being better? And it's like, everyone's going to say, oh, Sasha Vezenkov is the best shooter on the team. He's going to It's like, all right, so he supplants, like, some Kevin Huerter minutes or some Keegan Murray minutes or Harrison Barnes minutes. And then the offense that was the best, that had the highest rating we've ever seen, is, like, slightly better. And he's at least as bad or worse defensively than anyone he'll replace. Like, what? That's not how it works. Like, he could shoot 43% and average, a dozen points a game on super high overall efficiency, great cutter. Like, but the offense is sort of as good as it can be. So it's like, that's not where we need help if you're trying to add wins. So I just think you got to miss me with they made offensive additions. Even if they did, I'm just not persuaded that matters.
And maybe it's, you get some more stability early on in the De'Aaron Fox without Domas minutes. Again, I don't know how many more wins that adds to you. And so I think lower is a reasonable expectation. I still think they're a good team. They're going to be a very fun watch. I had them 3rd, I think, in my league pass rankings this year. Like, I like the Kings.
Yeah.
Our next team is also, it's not our final team. It's the Spurs. Their win total is 28.5. Grant, where are you at with that?
I got under 27 wins is my prediction, which is 5 better than last year when they were sort of, like, unfathomably bad. I think they were like -10. They were one of the only team in double digits in negative. Oh, I oversold it. 9.9, -9.9 net rating last year. Almost bobcatted. They were 30th on defense, 28th on offense. They'll just be a little bit better. We love Devin Vassell. I think Wembanyama is going to matter immediately on defense, but I'm giving them 5 extra wins. I just don't feel like they have a lot of other needle movers to make a huge leap from what was 22 wins last year.
So I have them at 25, which is still an under, and it makes me uncomfortable because Devin Vassell missed like half the year. You're getting Victor Wembanyama. Jeremy Sohan's going to be like another year better. I very much like Malachi Branham. I'm just sort of like, there's not enough wins to go around in the Western Conference, and this team should still like probably be pretty bad offensively. When you look at outside of Trey Jones, they're going to be relying on a lot of creation from either Devin Vassell or Jeremy Sohan, which I think is valuable experience for them going forward. How good is your offense in the half court with that? They are still going to look to play in transition a ton. I do believe, I mean, they were the worst defense in the league last year. That should get better, where if you want to press with Trey Jones and Jeremy Sohan up top, and then you have Devin Vassell and Wembanyama going around off the ball, and Zach Collins is your primary rim protector, that I'm into that. I also just wonder, is this a team? You talked about Portland being incentivized to kind of take it slow, maybe shut things down as the season goes on. This is the other team,
right?
That I would peg to do that. And so when you have so many other squads chasing wins immediately, 13 of them, like, yeah, maybe Houston and then gets a reality check and another team gets a reality check and comes down. I'm giving them 3 extra wins, and it feels so low because I'm so high on the trio of Sohan, Devin Vassell, and Julian Champagnie, obvious, Victor Wembanyama. But it's tough in the West, man. And look, Wembanyama could come in and be like one of the most impactful rookies we've ever seen. Look at some of the most other impactful rookies we've ever seen. And like, unless they're coming into teams that were already good, like Luka Doncic's Mavs won 33 games. And so, like, I'm not like Wemby could be better than him, and the Spurs would struggle to hit 30. Like,
that's a great point. And it's just harder for Wembanyama to impact winning because he's not, I don't think, at least at the beginning, just going to be like Luka was kind of just on the ball right away all the time. And so he had the ability to affect every offensive possession to a greater extent than Wembanyama is going to, even if they do ratchet up his on-ball touches. Like, I think one of the most striking things in the beginning of the preseason game they played against the Thunder is that they didn't really like look for Wembanyama or run a lot of sets to get him the ball. Or if they did, they were not executed well. So it's not like he's going to be able to defensively. I mean, who knows what the ceiling is defensively, but I don't think he's going to be positioned, at least in terms of his offensive role, to really, impact things like someone like Luka or LeBron, or I don't know who else you want to throw out there as impact rookies. So yeah, I agree.
Our final team, the Utah Jazz, their over under is set at 35.5. Oh, wow. Well, it's higher than I thought it was. 35.5 for the Utah Jazz. Where are you at, Grant?
Narrowly under. I have them for as finishing 34-48. So 34 wins. They're losing 3 off their total from last year. They won 37 last year. And they had a better differential than that. They should have been closer to 39. So knocking them down a decent amount here. To keep it simple, I don't see like clear leaps again from Lauri Markkanen or Walker Kessler. And I'm concerned about like who's going to make sure this offense is going to, function like it did last year when it was a top 10 level offense, at least according to Cleaning the Glass. Their playmaking concerns me. I don't know how much I love like Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Talen Horton-Tucker being your main drivers of offense. So yeah, I mean, again, to belabor the same point, somebody's got to win in the 30s. Like in the West, we got a couple in the 20s and everybody else is like 44 plus. So it's got to be Utah. And I also think they're not on the level of Portland and San Antonio in terms of they could take their foot off the gas, because they certainly didn't do it last year when they really should have. But they're kind of like they're that next team that I think they're almost in a class of one above Portland and San Antonio, but below the giant clump of teams with 45 win ranges.
I think this is the best way to look at it, because I do think some Jazz fans will be wrangled by it, and fair. But entering February 1st last year, they were 1 game over 500. Then, fueled by their trade deadline turnover, they were 11-19 the rest of the way, with a bottom 10 offense and defense. And so, like, the offense that was in top 5 all year got exponentially worse. They do not have the primary creator that's going to ensure it gets better. A lot more, Lauri Markkanen, great play finisher. They're going to run a lot of stuff for him off ball. How does he do with more self-creation, assuming they give him that burden? What does the front line sort of look like? Where are you going to play him with John Collins and Walker Kessler a bunch? Yes, you are. There's not an above average passer in that trio. And then is Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton running point? I think your best passer on the team right now not Chris Dunn, not Talon Horton Tucker. It's probably Keontae George. And are you going to play him right out of the gate? And then there's also Bryce Sensabaugh, Taylor Hendricks. I'm using this as the framing to say, and Ochai Agbaji, who wasn't immediately in the rotation last year. He was pretty impactful, but you're going to lean on the youngsters, the unproven guys, more out of the gate than you were last year, just by virtue of having more. Even Walker Kessler, like, we know what he is on defense, but like, now you've taken away, like, Mike Conley was like a really good setup man for everyone, or at least a good connective tissue. And I think that Jordan Clarkson made some incremental improvements as a passer. How much is that going to matter? And then even trying to sustain the offensive ceiling from last season, who do you trust on this team right now to hit an off the dribble three?
Ooh.
And to be fair, the Jazz do not throw a ton of ball screens at you, because that's not how they want to play. And that's fine. Who do you trust to hit an off the dribble three at a better than 34% clip, or better than a 33% clip?
Yeah, I mean, I trust Jordan Clarkson to take them. I don't know if I trust him to make them.
It's Jordan Clarkson or Keontae George, and maybe Larry Markkinen adds that to his game. And so there's just, I don't have an issue with it. And what I will point out, I have them at 33, so I'm under as well.
Okay.
There's a chance they go way under because Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck are opportunists. We saw it last year, and like, they're probably going to be starting from a lower baseline this year. It just wouldn't, looking at the landscape of the West, it wouldn't. No, do I expect them to trade Larry Markkinen? I'd be pretty floored. But do I expect them to go out there and maybe look to actively acquire wings because they don't have one on this team? No, I don't expect that either.
Yeah, no, I think again, they are in their own little class, and they're more likely to join the bottom two teams than they are to climb. I think just because of where the incentives are. Like, do they really want to be the 10th seed and in a play-in with a roster that, like, you know, some of these guys will be here long term, some won't. I think it just makes more sense for them. God damn, it made way more sense for them to bottom out last year, and they refused to do it. So,
well, like, I mean, we all underestimated how much. They might have even underestimated how good their collection was last year.
Clearly, they did. Yeah.
All right. So you have to get out of here, but do you have your win totals in front of you, so that this edition of Garbage Time will just be us recapping our wins? We'll do more garbage stuff on the next over under. Do you have your wins in front of you?
I do. So I'll just go alphabetically because that's how we started. I have Dallas.
So for the TikToks, can we both give it for each team? So if you want to,
okay.
And then, okay.
All right. So for the Dallas Mavericks, I have 42 wins.
I'm going to give them 44 wins.
Denver Nuggets, I've got 51.
I have 53 wins. You're a hater.
Golden State Warriors, I have 51 again. I'm not a hater there.
I have 47 wins. I'm a hater for the Warriors.
Houston Rockets down to 32 wins, or up from last year, I guess.
I'm right there. I have them at 31.
The LA Clippers, we have a big difference here. I got them at 41 and 41, a 500 team.
Speaking of a hater, I have them at 46 because that's what they are, 46-win team.
Los Angeles Lakers, I have them at 47 wins.
Me too. 47 wins sounds right.
Memphis Grizzlies going one better. I have them at 48.
I have them at 46 wins.
Minnesota Timberwolves, we're going to get to see them all healthy and together, right? So 46 wins for me.
That's why I went to 47 wins.
You love the Wolves. New Orleans Pelicans, 42 wins for me. Feels low.
The hate's just shining through. They're going to get 45 wins. Don't worry.
All right. Oklahoma City Thunder, I got them at 44. Prepare to hate them, Dan. Hate them now.
42 wins. I think they're going to regress a little bit. The West is tough.
All right. Phoenix Suns, I got them for 49.
Again, hater. They're going to win 53. Beal, Durant, Booker. This team's going to win a bunch of games.
All right. Portland Trailblazers, you talked me down to 27 wins.
I'm going to go with 23. They're not trying to win at all.
Sacramento Kings, 45 wins for me. That's a little bit of a drop from last year.
I have 44. We're in the same neighborhood.
San Antonio Spurs, 27. Not sure what to think about that one.
I have 25, and I don't know how to feel about that one either.
All right. And lastly, the Utah Jazz, 34 wins for me.
I got them at 33. Same neighborhood once again. This was fun. Are you ready to take us out of here?
I am ready. Everybody who listened, watched, thank you very much for doing so. If you have not already subscribed, wherever you can do that, Apple, Spotify, join our YouTube channel, get in the Discord. You can find all of the information on how to do that. The links for our socials as well are in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, buy the merch. Dan and I'm wearing merch today for the first time when Dan is not. You can find the link to the store also in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. I think that covers it. We have nailed all of these win totals perfectly as we promised, and nobody check back on this later. And we'll close as always with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina.